Made this choice and I've largely stuck to it because I don't have a plan B, so it had to work. So I guess I had to commit everything I had to it, spend countless hours practicing and just studying to improve myself. So also because I exhibited some of these skills when I was very, very young, and I was encouraged by family and friends alike to do more with it. So I guess I did, and we are here today. Well, there was a lot of drawing around the house when I wasn't doing schoolwork or some other work at home. I'll be making drawings into my books. There were a lot of comic books that I collected with friends, and I'll just copy some of these things into my books. There were also these very, very vibrant movie posters around town, so sometimes we'll go and sit under the huge signboards and try and copy some of these drawings into the books. My senior brother at the time was also drawing, so there was always someone that I could do it with as a fun activity, and sometimes we challenge each other a little, but I guess all those little things, people saw them and they said, hey, you're an artist, you can go to school here, you can study this program, you can do this with it. But there were other options though, but making art, drawing, painting was what I felt most comfortable doing, so it was what I gave more attention to. I think copying is a very important part of learning. There are times now when I still copy from reference images, but I guess where the difference comes would be why you do it, or generally why you draw, why you paint. Do you just do it for fun? Do you just do it to copy imagery, or you do it to communicate something? I used to make a lot of beautiful drawings just for fun, up until the time when I started reading some art history and I went to school in the College of Arts at KNUST. A lot of things changed because my studies opened me up to a lot of examples of artists who went beyond the level of just creating beautiful things or beautiful objects or beautiful gestures into making a lot of other kinds of work, and I became drawn to it when I knew I could also do more than just what I was doing at the time. It's been the path I've been on ever since.
I would say I'm motivated by partly what goes on in my thoughts and what happens around me. For instance, every day when I read the news, there is something going on that I find very, very interesting, and I think can become very good subject matter for my work. Also, because I am always fueled by that desire to create a new kind of knowledge or to ask interesting questions. I think those two sensibilities meet halfway, and so I'm always motivated to create new work. For me, creating art is now part of my identity, and I can't imagine myself doing anything else other than creating. So I'd say when I'm not painting or making art, I don't know who I am. It's almost like second nature for me right now to just create my art. So no art, no bright. Yes, I pretty much live within my workspace. So it's always, I'm always in the process of creating. Not only making my objects, but sometimes just researching and reading, because I consider those two as very, very important parts of my creative process. If my life was a movie and I had to pick 3 songs to be maybe the score or the soundtrack, My first song would be Hard to Choose by Rhapsody. My second song would be Obiba JK by Ackwerh. And I'll struggle to find a third song because there are so many songs that I like, but these two songs so far mean the most to me, and they are the two songs I'd say I listen to the most times. Hard to Choose by Rhapsody talks about a certain dilemma I think a lot of artists have had to go through. Personally, I've had to go through it a lot of times. And if you know the kind of music she makes, or if you know about her work, then you know there were a lot of times when she was either forced to go a certain path to gain commercial success, or to stick with what she felt was her true art and do as well as she's doing. She's not one whose work appears in like the biggest charts, or she's not on the biggest shows or the award ceremonies and the like. But if you know your music, you know she's a very, very true artist, one of the best rappers you can find around. And I think at the time when I started creating my work, I also had to go through that dilemma. It was either doing something very, very popular and finding instant fame or success, or sticking to doing something more critical, sometimes unpopular, and finding a different kind of success. It was something that took a long time to decide finally, but the moment I found her music and I heard her story, I was very, very motivated, and I took the kind of decisions that I took because I think she's on a certain path that I find myself on, or we are both interested in a lot of similar things. So it was very, very easy for her song to motivate me. And so it's one of the songs that I constantly go back to anytime I have that kind of decision to make, and I find it difficult. Ackwerh's song Obiba JK is one that was inspired by a childhood novel that a lot of Ghanaians would have read if they schooled in the early 90s. It talks about how one footballer played so well and won a very, very crucial match for his team, and he became a hero in the end. And I sort of have that thing in the back of my head that I become Obiba JK sometimes. And my biggest win would be being able to, among other things, being able to position myself as a relentless voice, a questioner, and someone who just has the power to hold certain power blocks to account. I think the kind of work I create has positioned me as such a character or a creative, and then the whole team becomes the section of the audience who are sort of looking up to me to keep speaking, not only for myself but on their behalf. Anytime I'm creating, maybe I'm in a silent dialogue with imaginary members of the audience. Being the artist or the author of my work, I know the kind of thoughts that go into my work, and I'm just imagining how people would see it. I'm always intrigued by the kind of explanations or interpretations people give to my work. So I sort of try to preempt some of these things and know how to place the elements in my work so that I sort of address these things before they even come up. That dialogue that my work is able to generate is very, very important for me. So sometimes I'm just having these imaginary dialogues or monologues when I'm creating, and sometimes when I finish creating, those come up or something else comes up, but it's always important to have that discussion when I'm creating. At times when I deal with very, very heavy laden topics or very touchy topics like I usually do, I sort of think of the kind of responses that they will elicit. Sometimes when I create work aiming to hold maybe a big politician or a big public figure to account, I think of what the possible repercussions could be. I saw a film Kanye West put out called Famous, which was accompanying a song of the same title. And in the film, he created this bird with prosthetic statues, very, very lifelike statues made in the images of all the characters that are captured here. Former presidents, George Bush, Trump, Chris Brown, Rihanna, his partner, and so on. And I was interested in the kind of things that the song was talking about. He was talking about the concept of privacy as he experienced it, what it meant to have a private life when you were a very, very public figure, and how it could create a lot of discord, in a lot of things that someone begins to do or someone does the moment they find fame and success. And the piece was very, very telling. After he showed the film, he found a way to exhibit it in a gallery as an autonomous artwork. And I was very, very happy about it. I was also interested in creating something that sort of diverted from the main issue, because if you know anything about those characters, you know a lot of them don't even like Kanye West himself, and they don't like each other. So it was a very, very interesting paradox he had created. And I was looking at how I could flip the script, so that instead of capturing these characters asleep in a bed, you would find them awake with the kind of imagined responses they would have if they actually woke up maybe halfway through the film and discovered that they were in such a state. So I literally had to try and imagine myself being each of these characters, and then using the kind of knowledge I know about their personal story and about their music or film or whatever it was that they did, what's a more realistic response to that current situation would be. It was a very, very daunting task, but one that I was very, very keen on completing. So it took me a very, very long time to pull this off. But I was very, very happy about the general turnout and also the kind of response that it got. So yeah, it's one of my very, very favorite pieces from 2016. Well, for instance, I would imagine myself as Rihanna. And it's very, very interesting because first of all, I'm not even a woman, and I'm nothing like Rihanna. I think she has her own life. She's living somewhere else. But it's interesting how I actually even wanted to be her based on the kind of knowledge that I collected about who she was or what kind of person she was. And I think that even went on to talk about the issue of privacy and like public life that the whole project was talking about, because how could one even dare to understand someone that I don't know personally, just based on the kind of things I've read about her or I've heard about her or I've seen about her in magazines or on the internet or somewhere. So it was a very, very interesting thing. And then I had to do the same for each of these characters. So you can imagine, there was a lot of things to process. But it was also very, very interesting. I enjoyed the challenge of it. I think every work I create, at the time I create it, is a favorite. Otherwise, I don't even think I'll commit my time to seeing it done. However, this work is is a standout one because of how much I had to invest into seeing it done, and then also the response that it got sort of crowned it all, because in 2017 it was one of the top 10 pieces at the APSA L'Atelier art competition. So it was quite a big deal for me, especially considering the fact that it was something I did for myself. I wasn't really looking for people to respond in such a nice way. So it was special for me, and that is why I still keep one of these prints here on me all the time.
So for an artist like myself, I think there are a lot of things to aim at. Definitely money is one of them, but it's not the most important one. I believe I'm an artist who is interested in some kind of transformation before different kinds of transactions. So when I make work, I'm looking at engaging people, changing mindsets, learning their thoughts, sharing my own thoughts and the like. But when it comes to the transaction part, I have begun selling limited edition prints of some of my work. I also do a lot of commission work for private commissioners, and I also work with a lot of art agencies when we create illustrations for different kinds of projects. There are a few grants that I've been a beneficiary of, or art competitions that pay some amount of money as a prize. So there are different ways of making money out of art, but I don't think it has to be an artist's primary occupation. Otherwise, it's very, very easy for them to digress from what their art could potentially become, and just do a lot of itchy stuff to make money. I don't think I'm interested in that now. So.